So guys, welcome back to the video, and today I thought we'd do something a little bit interesting and make a tier list of all the creative destruction weapons. So there should be an updated list, including the double barrel and the new sniper, as well as all of the older weapons as well. I don't have any of the traps, and I don't have any of the throwable weapons like grenades. However, I might do a separate tier list depending on how this video goes of all of those weapons as well. But I figured we start with just the base weapons, so let's get right into it. I should also mention quick that the link for this will be down in the description below if you guys want to make your own tier list of all the CD weapons. Just starting off here, we have the plain AK, and I think I'm going to put this up at B tier. Now, some of these may change as I put more weapons in more categories, but I think the base AK really belongs in B tier, maybe A tier. It's kind of in between. I personally don't like the AK, to be honest. It has pretty good damage, highest damage AR in the game. However, I don't really like tap firing it. It just feels kind of awkward, and even with tap firing, it still feels like there's bloom if you tap fire too quick. And a lot of times, if you tap fire slow enough to make it so it's accurate, people are going to get behind cover. They're just going to build, which makes it kind of not that useful. It is really helpful early game to kind of spray down builds when people don't have a lot of mats, and the builds they do have are low level, so that is kind of useful, but as an AR killing wise, it's not that great. All right, next up here we have the Scar, and I'm going to put this up in A tier just because I think it's a better AR than the AK. Now, this weapon used to be a lot better in my opinion, but I think they've made some changes to it in recent patches. A couple seasons ago, it felt like it had pretty much perfect accuracy even when spraying. However, when using it nowadays, it feels like there's a lot more bloom on it when just spraying at enemies, which kind of degrades the weapon in my opinion and makes it not as useful because you kind of have to worry about bloom. However, I still think it's one of the best ARs in the game. You can still tap fire it and do decent damage and spray it and hit some of your shots. I still think it's better than the AK just for that reason alone. And it can still spray through builds pretty well. I guess next up we have what I call the bubble rifle. And this thing is pretty trash. The bullets travel way too slow to really do any decent damage outside of pretty close range, and it doesn't really do that much damage either. If you can hit headshots with it, which isn't that hard to do from my experience, if you're decently close range, you can hit headshots, it can do pretty well. But if you find any of the other ARs, they're probably going to be better. So I'm going to put this down in D tier. I guess next up is the VHS, and this thing is absolutely garbage. I wouldn't recommend using this. The only time I could ever see myself using this is as an SMG replacement close range, just to spam it. The recoil is way too insane on this. It basically just kicks straight up, and you can barely even control it. Even pulling my mouse straight down as hard as possible, the bullets still go right above each other, which is absolutely insane. So yeah, this thing is horrible as an AR. Even trying to get that first shot to hit is kind of hard, and the next two won't even be anywhere close. So I'm gonna put this one down in F tier. Alright guys, and lastly for the ARs here, we have the scoped AR. Now I think this thing is pretty good. I don't like the new reticle they have on it. I liked the old reticle a lot better, but I'm gonna throw this up in B tier because I do think it is a pretty good AR variant. I do think there are some better long range weapons. However, early game to mid game, this is pretty good. I don't think it's that great against real players if you're trying to get a lot of damage off. It's kind of better for chip damage just to get 1 or 2 extra shots in. I think a better combination is something like a regular AR, like a Scar or an AK combined with a sniper, like an AWP. It's really not that hard to hit shots at medium to long range with a regular AR. So I don't think the scoped AR really helps that much. However, I do think it is somewhat decent, which is why I'm putting it up at B tier. Alright guys, so next up we have the base pistol. Now, I actually think this thing is pretty good. In my opinion, I think this thing is actually better than the bubble rifle and the VHS in terms of an AR. This thing is pretty accurate. It has a somewhat slow firing rate. However, it does decent-ish damage. And I think if you don't have an AK or a Scar, it can work as an AR kind of well. However, obviously not as good as a real AR, which is why I'm putting it down at C tier. Better than the bubble rifle and the VHS, but not as good as a real AR. Okay, guys, next up we have the scoped pistol, and this thing is pretty garbage. It has an even slower fire rate than the regular pistol, and I don't like the scope on it at all. I don't know why you would want to use a scoped pistol. Like I said before, it's not that hard to hit targets at range with even the regular pistol, and the scoped AR is just better. It has a faster fire rate and does more damage. So I don't know why you would ever want to use this thing, which is why I'll put it down at E tier. I guess. So next up we have the regular revolver, and I'm going to put this thing up at A tier because this thing is just that good. I like to refer to this thing as the unscoped op just because it does a whole lot of damage. It can't one-shot headshot people with full shield, at least for the lower variants. However, it does do really good damage. It does do high damage. I do think it's a teeny bit harder to hit shots than the regular op is. However, I do like to use it as an op if I don't have one. I like to use it as my long range. I'll take it over the scoped AR. Like I said before, again, it's not that hard to hit shots at medium to long range with the regular ARs. So I like to have a high damage weapon in my fourth slot as my fourth weapon slot. So I'll definitely take the revolver over the scoped AR any day. Obviously, op is just better than the regular revolver. The regular revolver can definitely do really, really well, especially if you can hit headshots. I guess coming in next is the new double barrel shotgun, and this thing is absolutely garbage. It doesn't do that much damage in my experience. I know it's supposed to be kind of like a high damage but low ammo type of weapon. That's kind of how double barrels are always designed. However, it just doesn't really do that much damage in my experience. I've messed around with it a little bit, but it just doesn't deliver results. The regular shotgun is just better, the regular pump. So I'm actually gonna put this up at D tier because it can be used, I guess. However, it's just not that good. And next up is the DTR, which is just even worse than the double barrel. It does about the same or less damage than the double barrel. And even though you can spam it, that low damage just doesn't really work in my opinion. I usually try and change up my playstyle a little bit with the DTR because it is a spammable shotgun. So I usually try and use it up close and personal and don't try to really build or hide behind cover that much. And it just ends up getting me killed a lot because I try and spam it, but it just doesn't do enough damage to kill somebody by the time they can kill me. And I don't have the problem with the regular pump, which is why I'm going to be putting it up at A tier. If we're talking about the purple or gold pump, I would put those up at S tier, but as overall for the pumps, I'm going to stick that at A tier just because they do a good amount of damage. You know, the regular pump, you kind of need to have one. Every loadout kind of needs to have one. Start off a fight with good high damage, get that good initial shot off, and then move on to just spraying them down with an AR or an SMG. But yeah, the regular pump is just better out of all three of the shotguns. It just does the most consistent damage, and it has pretty decent range as well. You know, it's a shotgun, so it's not going to be able to snipe people with it. You know, it does have somewhat decent range as well, which is kind of nice to see. I guess next up we have the Stinger, and this thing is absolutely garbage. I barely ever use this thing. I don't know if they took it out of the game. I don't really find it that much anymore, if at all. They might have taken it out of the game, but this thing is garbage. It's terrible. Honestly, not as bad as a VHS or a DTR IMO, but it is pretty bad. I wouldn't recommend using this thing at all. If you find it, literally any other gun is just better, especially all the other SMGs, which is kind of what it's trying to be. It is kind of nice that it can like lock onto people and kind of just aimbot people. However, its damage is just way too low and it has a kind of weird fire rate, and I don't really like it that much. I guess so next up is the Plasma SMG, and I'm actually gonna put this up at C tier, which may be a surprise. I was debating between D and C tier. However, I decided between C tier because it kind of fills the same role as the pistol does, in my opinion, which is, you know, if you don't really have any other SMG or spray weapon, it can do pretty well. However, the fact that it doesn't do that much damage and has limited ammo, a limited magazine capacity, it really isn't that helpful and really isn't that great. However, like I said, it's going in the same tier as the regular pistol because it can fill the void if you need it to, and it works decently well in that position. There just are better weapons than it. I guess next up is the UMP, and I'm actually going to sit this up at B tier. The UMP and the regular Uzi are pretty similar in my opinion. The UMP does a little bit more damage, however it has a slower fire rate, and the Uzi does a little bit less damage but has a higher fire rate, and I kind of go back and forth with these. It kind of depends on the day which one I'm feeling, or kind of the game which one I'm feeling. I usually just take whatever is higher color. Like if I have a blue Uzi or a green UMP, I'll usually just hit the blue Uzi. Just kind of depends on what I'm feeling and what I can get access to. I do think the Uzi is up at B tier. I've started not to like the SMGs as much. I just am starting to feel like they're not as useful, especially since they lowered the inventory size from 6 to 5, simply because the ARs, especially the Scar, which is one of the other reasons why I like it more, can can be used as kind of a pseudo SMG as well, just to kind of spray down builds and spray down people close range. It can still be used a pretty good degree in that scenario. So I've started not to like the SMGs as much anymore. However, they can still be used, especially early game, to good effect, which is why I'm going to be putting the Uzi up at A tier as well. Now, like I said, I kind of go back and forth with these. However, I do think the blue Uzi is a little bit better than the purple UMP, just because of that higher fire rate. I do think it is a teeny bit better. I feel like it can kind of melt people a little bit faster than the UMP can. I think the Uzi is just a teeny bit better. If there was an in-between A and B, I would definitely put the Uzi at an in-between, just because I don't think it is as good as the other A tier weapons. However, I do think it is a teeny bit better than the B tier, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and throw it up in A tier. Alright guys, and up next we have all of the blatantly overpowered weapons that should just be removed from the game, and you are a trash player if you use. We can just move on. Alright guys, next up is the crossbar, and I'm going to stick this in E tier because I do think it has a somewhat helpful niche. I think it's mostly designed to take down builds. However, it's just not that good. Along with it being extremely rare is kind of just hindering it a lot. I don't think people get enough play time with it to really find out how to use it effectively, and even if people did, I'm not sure they would really like it all that much. I don't think it has a very meaningful use case, which is why I'm putting it at E tier. I guess next up is the VSS. This thing is absolutely terrible. Pea shooter, I wouldn't recommend using this at all. Like I've said a bunch of times, the regular ARs aren't that difficult to hit shots at medium ranges, and just any other scoped weapon is better. The scoped AR seems like it has a similar fire rate and just does more damage. The revolver does a lot more damage, and any of the other scoped snipers are just better, which brings us into the semi-auto sniper, and this thing is actually really good. This may be a somewhat controversial pick, but I'm gonna put this up at A tier. Now again, if there was an in-between between A and B, I would definitely stick it in there because I don't think it's as good as the regular op. However, I don't really think it deserves a spot down here with the other B tier weapons, and this may be a controversial pick. However, hear me out. This thing does a consistent 75 damage to the body, which is absolutely insane when you take a look at its magazine capacity and its fire rate. This thing can be used mid to long range to decent effect. At super long ranges, I don't think it's that great just because you have to lead your shots. I've had some weird cases where it looks like the shot hits, but it doesn't hit, and sometimes where it looks like the bullet doesn't hit the target, but it like gives you a damage like it hit. So it's a little bit weird at long ranges. However, like medium ranges to close range, it is absolutely overpowered, and I don't say that jokingly. Like, it's actually really, really good. If you don't have a pump, this is a better shotgun than the DTR and the double barrel. This thing does a consistent 75 damage, and you can spam it about as quickly as the DTR. You do have to get somewhat lucky to hit fire and make sure your bullets hit, but if you're within close shotgun range anyways, you should be able to barrel stuff people with it and hit the majority of your shots with it. It absolutely tears through people close range. It can tear through builds as well. Early game, if they only have, say, tier 1, 2, 3 builds, it can tear through those insanely quickly, which is one of the main reasons I like it, is just to tear through builds. But it can definitely shred through people as well. I mean, at that medium range, it can do pretty decently as well. So this may be a controversial pick, but I'm definitely sticking by that this is an A tier weapon and definitely deserves more use. Now, next up, we have the regular op, which I'm going to put up at S tier. I don't think it's fully an S tier weapon. I think it deserves a spot in between S and A tier. However, I'm going to stick it up at S tier. The op is definitely arguably the best weapon in the game. High damage, you can one-shot headshot. And it can even one-shot body shot to people with no armor if you have the purple or gold variant, which is absolutely insane. And even close range trying to no-scope people is a viable strategy. I know people like to do that a lot. Instead of running a pump, they just try and no-scope the op. Its damage is just unmatchable, and it's really not that hard to hit shots with it. It is definitely pretty easy to hit shots, especially in medium ranges. At longer ranges, the lead really isn't that bad on it as long as you get used to it. It can be somewhat difficult to use as opposed to like a hit scan and scar, and that's another reason why I like the deagle as well, is because it's hit scan. But I will of course take the op over the revolver every day. Like I said, high damage, not that hard to hit shots close to medium ranges, and gives you that really, really good damage at longer ranges as well with that scope. It's probably the best way to start a fight, in my opinion, is just trying to snipe at somebody, get that initial, over 100 damage on them, even if you hit them in the body. Because if you can start off a fight by taking off all their shield plus a little bit of their white health, you're in a a way better position to win that fight, especially if you can follow that up with a scar, like spraying with a scar. And last up, we have the new 50 cal sniper, which is absolutely insane. Probably one of the most OP weapons out there. I don't think it's as OP as these other guns out of the bottom, assuming you're going up against somebody who actually knows how to correctly use these weapons. But the 50 cal sniper is absolutely stupid. It can shoot through walls. As far as I know, it's pretty much hit scan, so you don't have to lead your shot at all. I will say it does get slightly nerfed by the fact that it has a limited ammo capacity and the fact that you can hear reload from anywhere on the map, from super far away, so you do know that somebody has it. However, I really don't think those two things are enough to kind of nerf it back down to the level of the other weapons. And also the fact this thing is pretty rare does help to nerf it as well, but you just can't deny the fact that it's basically hit scan and that it can shoot through walls is just stupid and really doesn't have a place in this game, and just makes it pretty much the best weapon in the game no matter what the scenario. Because even if somebody knows it's coming, they really can't do anything to stop it unless they really just adjust their whole game around it, which is kind of what I have to do when I hear it. I just adjust my entire game around it. Yeah, I think the 50 cal is pretty much the best gun in the game, along with the op. So yeah, this is my tier list. There are some guns that I think could go in maybe some different spots. Like I said, if I had some in between ranks, there would definitely be some guns in there. The op would definitely be in between S and A, and like the Uzi would be in between A and B. But I think this is a pretty good idea of where I generally feel most of the guns should go. Like I said in the intro, the link to this tier list will be down in the description below if you guys want to make your own. I'm definitely interested in seeing what you guys think and where all these guns should go. So if you guys do end up making your own, make sure you guys post those in my Discord. I'd love to take a look at those. My Discord will be linked down in the description as well. I stream over at twitch.tv/achaser. I try to be live every weekend as well as a couple days during the week as well. I do post in my Discord whenever I go live, so if you guys do want to know when I go live, make sure you join that as well. And that will be it for me for now, and I'll see you guys all next time.